things out from under the rear of the car as stated in the written text. Now we're going to move on to the video. After everything's unbolted, taken out of the way, the gas tank's gone, everything's gone, our next step is going to be to remove a small section of floor pan. I'm going to lay it out, show you the layout on it, we'll trim it out, and then we'll be ready to install the rear. This is the trunk area looking inside. The gas tank has been removed, as you see. This is the offending area here. Our shock, it comes in at the angle of the pan, the floor pan does, and our shock area is going to be in the center of the floor pan area, so we're going to have to remove that one section. I've got it drawn out here. Next I'll show you the measurements on that. We'll trim that out using a plasma cutter. You can use a sawzall, you can use a cut-off wheel, you can use the lowly torch if you so desire. It doesn't matter, but we're all going to be trimming this panel. Included in the kit will be a sheet metal panel to cover this area back up. Alright, next procedure. Okay, the trunk area is laid out to trim the sheet metal out of it. The first thing we're going to do, we're going to start, I'm going to measure my bottom line, the line that I need to cut across the bottom. To get this line, I butt my tape measure at the back panel between the tail lights, and I measure forward 34 1/4 inches. Make my mark. I do the same thing on both sides, 34 1/4 inches. I come back on my top line, I butt my tape measure, measure forward down the top of the floor pan, 36 inches, and I make a mark. I connect my bottom line with my top line. Once I get to my top line, I get the 36 inch mark, I measure from there forward 13 inches, right on over into the front of the car, 13 inches. Following the trunk pan, right straight back. Same here, 13 inches. And then I'll cut right straight across. What we're doing, we're cutting this hump out of it and this area, and we'll be taking sheet metal coming back in here and standing this area up in our shock area. Our coilover shocks is going to be in this area here under the sheet metal that we replaced. Alright, next I'll go ahead and take the plasma cutter, trim it out, we'll do the installation. Okay, now we have the trunk pan trimmed out. We just cut our straight line across, tied the top line at 34 1/4 up to our 36 inch line from the back. We measured forward 13 inches on both sides, running straight forward parallel with the frame rail. Both sides, tied them together at the front 13 inches forward from our line here. Cut it out, that's it. Now we'll move on to the installation process. Okay, this is for you guys that don't have the OE style rear end housing, or are using a different housing that came from under your car and that is not the same width on your pads. What I've done here, I'm setting this rear end up for the 8.8 going into 66, 67 Fairlane. This is out of the later model Mustang, so of course the bracketry was different. If you're not using the 8 inch or the 9 inch that came right from under the car originally, you'll need to trim the brackets off and install the spring pads that we sent. Pretty simple process. All we're doing is cleaning the housings off, taking the spring pads, welding them on the housing at the correct center line distance of what the center line of our front spring eye pockets is. Our lower link bars are going to run straight parallel with the frame rail, straight back, and so the distance here is what it needs to be between the pads on the housing, so we can attach them to the housing and to the car in the original OE position. On these housings, it doesn't matter whether it's the 9 inch or this one or a Chevrolet rear end. It doesn't really matter, it doesn't know. All we're doing is setting the pads on it at the correct angle. And what I do here is I block my rear end up and I either set the face, the pinion angle square at 0 or either 3 degrees is what I want my up on my rear end housing. I want it pointed up at 3 degrees. So I offset the spring pads with the pinion angle itself. At that point, what I do is put the pads on in place at the correct distance. You can either put the back of the housing at 0, set the pads at 3 degrees, or set the pads at 0 and put the housing at 3 degrees. It doesn't matter. Anyway, you'll want the pads on the housing with the housing in the car with the pinion pointing 3 degrees up, that final deal. So we're just got an offset of 3 degrees here with this going up, which I've got the rear end turned upside down here, so actually it's pointing down in this position. But from that point, we're going to weld them on and that'll be done. So it doesn't matter whether it's 8.89 inch, whatever it is what it is. Okay, now that we have everything out from under the car, we're ready to start the install process of the Rod & Custom rear coilover kit. What I've done, I've unboxed the rear. I laid out all the parts, all the nuts and bolts, shocks, springs, attaching bars, everything that Rod & Custom sent me. I unloaded out of the box, laid it on my work table, inventoried, made sure it was all there. And now we will proceed on with the installation. We're going to do it step by step. Okay, now that we've inventoried everything, the first process is to start installing the upper frame rail bars. The first thing I'm going to start with is the upper adjuster link frame bar. That's what your upper adjusters attach your rear end housing to. It bolts between the frame rails in this area here. And it's at this point, if you're welding it in, you just put it in place, you'll weld around your edges. If you're doing it as a bolt in, it's going to come with a frame rail support plate for the outside of the frame rail through here. We're going to now put the bar in place and show you what it looks like in place. Okay, we've got the bar up in place, getting ready to put it between the frame rails. Guys, this thing is slit right up between the frame rails. You might need to take and bump it with a rubber hammer, but it should fit right up in it. All right, it will go all the way up in the corner. Push it all the way against the floor pan, all the way up to the OE shock mount. And that's what this is. This is the OE shock cross member. This is the factory cross member that the shock came in. You'll butt up against it and you'll butt through the floor pan, which will leave about 3/4 of an inch or so from the bottom of the frame. And just push it all the way up, all the way forward. Now, we're going to weld this in, so we'll just weld all the way around it. At this point, if you were bolting it in, you would mark your holes, take it back down, drill the holes through the frame rail, and then put the support plate on the outside with the hardware, with the grade 8 hardware bolts and stuff supplied. All right, now we're going to clamp this bar in place because we're going to weld it. Okay, step 2. Our next part to install is going to be our coilover shock frame rail bar. And what this is just like it says, it's the bar that runs between the frame rail, bolts on with your plate or either welds around the plate, that your coilover upper mounts are attached to. These go straight down. What we've done, now we're going to put this in place. What we need to do now is we'll go back up to the OE shock mount, our cross member that the factory had in there, but our tape measure here, measure back 7 3/4 inches, and we'll square that line off the bottom of the frame rail. Just come with a square it off that bottom edge of the frame rail right straight up, 7 3/4 inches straight back from that mount. At that point, that's going to be the front edge of our coilover shock bar. It'll be the front edge. Then it'll go back. Alright, we're going to install that now. Okay, now that we've got the upper shock bar in place, and we make sure that this is parallel to the bottom of the rail when it's in place. What I normally do, I usually leave about 1/4 inch up from the bottom. Bring it up. I don't butt it all the way at the top. I just leave it right along this edge here where this edge, round edge squares off at. And I weld it in at that point. You want to keep this parallel with the bottom. That orientates our shock tabs in the right position when we put our coilovers on. This plate, it doesn't matter if you put it 1/4 inch down or you put it all the way at the top. All this is going to do is affect the height of the car by 1/4 inch or ever how much you put it from this point, which can be easily adjusted out. Alright, now we're going to lay out our sway bar brackets. You'll measure back side of the OE shock cross member along the bottom, pull straight back along the bottom of the frame at 14 inches. Square it off. 14 inches. This is going to be the front edge of your sway bar angle. It'll start here and go back. It'll mount on the outside and turn and go under. We're going to mount that now. Okay, at this point the sway bar frame rail bracket is now clamped to the frame rail. You clamp it on the outside of the rail, make your marks and drill through to the inside because you can't get your drill between here. Drill it from the outside, mount it on the outside and turn it back under the rail. Or either you can weld it from the outside, doesn't make any difference. Alright, we're going to install those now and move on. Okay guys, and the next step is to install our lower link bars. Attaches the frame rail, the frame to the housing. We're going to install these 2 lower bars. On these bars you have one end, one size, one end the other size. One end is larger than the other. The large end goes to the front. We'll be using the long bolt, be coming from the inside the frame rail out with a large washer on the outside. Okay, it goes right up in this pocket just like you see here. Slips right up in the bottom, right through here, bolt through it, bolt and washer, tighten. Now this is a lock nut, you don't have to torque it. Tighten it down, pull it down against the ear, you have a steel sleeve inside the bushing. Tighten it down there, you're good. Leave this end hanging. Our next step is going to be to bring the housing up in place, get it lined up, and attach it. Okay guys, one thing to note. We're going to be sending you a Pro-Thane Super Grease. This is a silicone-based lubricant. You're going to use it on all your urethane bushings to prevent squeaks. Everywhere you got a urethane bushing is going to come in contact with another bushing or another hard surface such as metal. You'll definitely want to use this on it. We'll be sending you with it. Don't use wheel bearing grease. Don't use any kind of petroleum-based lubricant, as that will make the bushings even harder, make the squeak even worse. This will take the squeak out. Do this. Okay, now next we've got the rear end housing sitting under the car in roughly the location where it's going. I've got it jacked up to where I've got my 7 inches or 6.5 to 7 inches bottom of the rail down to the top of the housing. That'll give me a general starting point on hooking this stuff up. Okay, next we're going to take our bracket that's going to go under on the spring pad on the bottom. You've got a locating pin here that's going to go into the spring pad hole, the center. If you're using the standard rear end that come out from under the 67 Fairlane, and the one that come under the car, and you're not replacing it for any reason, you'll be receiving a spacer like this that will go around the pin. That actual pad has a larger hole here, thus requiring this. But if you're going with a rear end from Rod and Custom, or you're taking a rear end out from under another car and you're having to change the rear end pads for any reason, you'll be going to this side. Okay, here we have our bracket in place, one on each side. And what I do, I take and put it on with my U-bolts, open face, facing my front trailing arm, and I leave it loose. I just bring it right up against the pad and I leave it finger loose. That way it makes it a lot easier to get the lower link in it. You can work it around. After I get everything together, then I'll pull this stuff up and tighten it. This also makes it easier on center side to side once I get these lower links hooked up. So what I'm going to do now that I got the brackets on the housing, I'm going to bring the links up in place and hook them up here. Okay, now the lower links are in each pocket on the respective side, still remembering to use our super urethane grease. Everything's still hand tight, so we can now, the next thing I'm going to do is center the rear end housing between the rails, set the pinion angle up, and show you what I'm going to do up here as far as mounting the welding ear tabs on and then I'm going to show you how I would set it up as a bolt end. Okay, we now have the rear end housing in position. Now I'm going to show you now what I'm doing. I'm using this bare housing. You can use your full housing. You don't have to take the gear out of it. It's just easier for me to handle this light housing to show you in this demonstration. I've got this 8-inch housing in place. I've got it at my ride height, 6.5 to 7 inches down to the top of my rail, bottom of the frame rail. I clamp a piece of flat bar on each end of the axle flange or either axle housing, depending on whether the axles are in or not. At that point, I measure side to side, and what I'm doing, I'm just centering this flange, the end of the axle, to the rail. Don't worry about the center section. End of axle, centered on both sides. You want them the same measurement, both sides. At that point, I'll put 2 degrees from what my rocker panel reads, because you know the back of your engine is always going down. I'll put 2 degrees up. Right now, the front of my car, this car's setting level, I'm gonna put 2 to 3 degrees up on the pinion. And what we're trying to do is get the pinion angle and the transmission output shaft angle running in the same plane. It's running down, pinion running up, it's running the same plane. End of drive shaft making the same loop on each end, which reduces vibration. Different angles in each end of the drive shaft causes vibration. All right, now that the rear end is centered, I've got my pinion angle set. What I'm going to do now is hook my upper adjusters to my rear end housing. Okay, the upper adjuster links that goes to the upper adjuster frame bar will come preset, your length. You don't have to bother with that. It's become already set for what you need. What we need to do now, if we're doing the weld-on tabs, and you can skip this step if you're doing the bolt-in rear housing setup and not doing the weld-on tabs. This is just for you weld-on guys, for the 8-inch or the 9-inch. So what I do is take my right side passenger and my driver's side and hook them to the respective link bars. These are going to come marked. It'll say driver's side inside tab, driver's side outside tab, passenger side outside tab, passenger side inside tab, or whichever switch. But anyway, it'll come marked. What we'll do now is bolt them to the upper frame bar link, let them hang down on the housing, and I'll show you what I'm talking about. When you're putting these upper link adjuster bars into their tabs and also the upper link adjuster bar on the frame rail, guys, you've got these cone spacers. You'll get 2 cone spacers per each rod bearing, and they go on each side. These things are tapered. And what it's for, the tapered end will go against the joint, like so. And what it's going to do, it's going to allow the joint to get full travel. Move back and forth, full travel, like this. One for each side. I'm going to put it together and show what I'm talking about. This is what we're after, guys. This will give us full rotation. Spacers on all the hind joints. Bevel side in toward the spacer, toward the joint. Now I'm going to show you the install. Okay, with the pinion angle set like we want, rear end housing centered side to side like we want, I've got the upper link adjuster bars bolted in. And guys, this front bars have a thin lock nut, so the very thin lock nut goes here because of the clearance on the bar. The thicker one won't hit the bar, so we've got a thin jam nut here. Okay, all we do at this time, the bars are 15 inches out. I make sure I'm both the exact same length with my tabs bolted on it, tight. You just pick it up and you just let it fall down on the housing. On each side, you just let the ears drop down on the housing. At that point, I come to the back side of the housing, and what we want to do is we want to line that bar. We want a straight shot to the front. No misalignment of the bearing. So what I do is I pivot these brackets on the housing as such and slide it up the housing until I get my fit that I'm looking for. We have misalignment. That's what the cone spacers are. It's for the misalignment. You don't have to be exact, but you do want to get as close as you can. Same thing both sides. You just get the brackets in line with each other. And you just want the rods running with no bind between them. You want the hind joints running straight, the brackets facing each other. That's what we're after on both sides. At that point, I'll take the welder, I'll tack my ears to the housing. Both sides. Good. I'll remove the joint from it. Then weld it on the housing and put it back together. And that's all there is to the weld in part. If you were bolting it in, of course, I've got the bolt-on plate that bolts across the top of your carrier here. You use the same bars, everything bolts up the same. It's just a matter of, rather than welding tabs on it, we take the top bolt-on plate and bolts on across the carrier, across here with the carrier in it. You'll remove these nuts, put the bracket on, tighten them up, put it in place, and these bars will go fixed to it, and you'll be done. Okay, if doing the bolt-in bracket, it's just a matter of removing the top 3 nuts across your rear end carrier. You'll still have your gear in, this housing doesn't. So what I've done, I've bolted this one on with the correct amount of thickness and spacer to show you what I'm talking about. And then it's just a matter of hooking up your rod back across. That's it. You don't have to worry about welding ears, it's already here. Bolt that on, you're done. Okay guys, it's time now to install the rear coilovers. They'll install with your adjuster knob up and inward, like so. Top, knob in. Just like that. Threads at the bottom of the shop. I'm not going to show you the installation on these guys. It's pretty obvious of what the situation is. Bottom here, top here, with the hardware we provide. That's it on that. We will move on to the sway bar bracket, showing you how to bolt it here, and I'll show you what we're doing with the sheet metal inside, and that's pretty much it, guys. Okay guys, it's time to install the sway bar kit. This is the kit, all the hardware, end links and everything. I'm now going to put it in place to the brackets that we welded onto the frame with these clamps around these bars, not forgetting to use the Prothane super grease. Here, under the washers, everywhere there's urethane touching something. I'm going to install it now. Okay, we now have the sway bar end links hooked up. We had bushing, urethane bushing, washer, sleeve, washer, bushing, washer. With it set up at rod height like we set it, as you can see, the arm is parallel. We have the shocks on it now. They're in place. So everything's good here. That's what, don't forget your urethane grease. Alright, next we'll go inside, show the sheet metal. But before we do that, well, I'm going to go back, and since this is ready to go, the last thing we're going to do is you'll go back, check your pinion angle once again, and then we'll go back over that one more time. Okay guys, we have everything in now. The last thing I do, go back, check, make sure side to side still centered. And I go back, pinion angle. Make sure I still got my 2 degrees in it. And at that point I'll go and I'll go ahead and tighten down all my bolts, U-bolts, end link bolts, shock. Everything at this point right now is still hand tight. It's not loose, you can't move anything, everything's in place, but at the same point, there's nothing tight as far as bolts go. So that shows you the fit on it, guys. Alright, that's it right there. Tighten everything down, and I'm going to show you how to install the trunk pan. That should be it. Okay, here is the rear coilover installed, looking at it from the trunk, from the top view. You can see the coilover, you can see the housing. And by the way guys, these shocks, this adjuster right here, this is for your dampening. It's 12 positions. It'll come to you turned all the way to the left. That's the softest, all the way up to the hardest. It does make a difference in this ride. Now, I'm going to install the pan. By the way, none of this stuff is powder coated. I cleaned it, scuffed it good, and used Rust-Oleum. Don't use anything any cheaper, but with Rust-Oleum, I found that's almost as good as powder coating. Absolutely, guys. Okay, your panels are going to come in 2 pieces. You're going to have your top piece, which lays across the top just like it says in your back panel. It's going to come just exactly like you see it, the same size you see. It's going to be identical to this. If you followed the cutout as we showed you earlier, this will fit perfectly. It's made to fit. I'm going to install it now and show you exactly how it goes. Okay, the first thing we're going to do, we're going to put in the back panel, the rear panel. As you can see, it's got a lip on both sides and across the bottom. What it does, I just drop it down in the opening and I just bring it up both sides. I catch a lip on the inside, the lip across the bottom, and the lip there. It'll be flush at both ends at the top at that point. The way I fasten it, I drill a series of holes and then I just plug weld it as I go down. I'm going to clip this in place and show you exactly what I'm talking about. Okay, I have the rear panel pinned in place. You can weld it, glue it, pop, rivet, doesn't matter to me at this point, it's just covering your hole. I just take the top plate up there with the 1/2 inch lip down and slide it behind my panel. At that point, I would come across the top and weld it, and down the sides. See how good this stuff fits, guys? It's going to come to you just like that. If you'll cut it out like that, that's the way it's going to look. I'll stitch this thing in there. You can sheet metal screw it, rivet it, Zeus fastener, like I said. At that point, just take and run your bead of silicone or bead of caulking around it after you prime it to keep it from leaking water, and do the same thing across the bottom. And that's it. Start a gas tank, you'll be ready to ride. I'm going to give you a few tips just a second, and that'll finish it up. Looking good, looking good. See how good that looks, guys? Just follow it to the T. No problem, no problem. Guys, any of this raw stuff, you're not painting within 24 hours after touching it or whatever, WD-40, spray it immediately. Easy to clean off. You can paint right over it after you clean off, not bad. All your fasteners, anti-seize. Use it, use it, use it. All right, guys, any questions, give me a call.